Hi there, Henry from 911 Virgin, Porsche people in Uxbridge. Welcome to another video. This is a little bit different. I'm kind of quite light-hearted in the videos we do, and hopefully they're a bit of fun. There's a video that I want to make now, which is probably a bit more serious. And truth be told, it's probably a video or sort of something I've wanted to say for a lot of years. I've been buying and selling cars for over 30 years, and in that time I see the same mistakes made, and I see the same scams and things going on. I see the things happening now as they were 30 years ago, and it's kind of a bit of a shame really, because you would have thought that with the advent of the internet and various forums and social platforms and so on, that things would have changed, and they haven't done. Particularly with the internet forums, I think there's a fear of libel, and so very often when things go wrong, people don't talk about it, or they start to talk about it and it gets shut down. And what you do find is there's little kind of cliques and hints and things being said without being said. So the inner circle sort of know what they're saying, but people outside that inner circle don't really know. And so I want to talk for 10 minutes or so about buying and selling cars, and it's going to do two things. It's going to help you to consider what to do if you want to sell your car, specifically your Porsche, and some things you might think about and different ways of approaching it, the various options available to you. And it will hopefully also help you avoid a scam which ultimately costs you your car and the value of your car. So it's 10 minutes, and yeah, watch it, and hopefully it's of use. So I think one of the problems with buying and selling cars is that to some extent it's almost seen as a rite of passage. You know, every man can buy and sell cars. It's like every man knows how to buy a car. You kick the tyres and it's a man thing. And so if something goes wrong, particularly guys are quite embarrassed to say something went wrong and I lost all my money, and because in effect it's like you're criticising someone's genitals if you say you can't buy and sell cars properly. And so for that reason, I think a lot of criminals and people doing things illegally or wrongly get away with it. So if you want to sell your car, you've got a number of options. Probably the first thing that someone would consider would be a private sale. Back in the day, we used to stick a advert in the back of Exchange and Mart or the Sunday Times magazine or Exchange and Mart, wherever it may be. These days it tends to be on the internet, and you theoretically get the highest price for your car. Certainly that's what people think. When you're selling something, always see it from the other person's side, from the buyer's side. I think if you do that, it helps you sell your car or whatever it is easier, and it helps you understand how things are. So from the seller, you think, okay, private sale, I'm going to get the most money for my car. But viewing it from a buyer's point of view, the buyer, when they buy off the private seller, there's no guarantee with it. So they're always going to say, well, I want to save a bit of money because I'm getting no guarantee when compared to buying off a dealer. You also have to be a cash buyer if you're going to buy privately, and you can't have a part exchange. So there is a danger that a private buyer feels they're the only person in the world who's got cash, and so they're going to be quite hard on the private seller, because they feel that, you know, they have that power of I've got cash and I'm you know, cash is king sort of thing. So also, you can't get finance generally. You can get a personal loan, but you couldn't take out traditional finance with balloon payments and so on if you're buying privately. So again, you're sort of limiting your audience. If you're going to sell privately, you have to present your car to the absolute best of its ability. And so you're going to have to spend time and money preparing your car. Again, it's this thing of seeing it from the buyer's point of view, not your own point of view. You think you've got the best car in the world, but maybe you wouldn't buy your own car off yourself if you actually came and looked at it and, you know, inspected it in the same way you would someone else's car. Actually, you find fault with it, and all those bits that you think, well, I could do with doing that, you would find fault. So you're going to have to spend some time and money getting it prepped up. You're going to have to sort it out mechanically, you're going to have to sort out bodywork and so on and so forth. So do keep that in mind. There's also a risk element if you're selling privately. Really two distinct areas. The first is a kind of straight theft thing, in that if you sell a car privately, you're inviting someone around to your house, you're showing them where you live, you're showing them the car, you're probably even telling them about security on the car, and so there is a danger that a certain element of society would say great and see it as an opportunity to steal the car off you at a later stage, or even, you know, during a test drive. It's not unheard of for the person test driving the car to politely ask you to step out of the vehicle because they would like your car, and you would be probably best advised to do so. So that's one option. The other thing is fraud in terms of how you actually get paid for your car if you're selling it privately. There's a really difficult imbalance between the private buyer and the private seller when it comes to transferring the money. And if you're selling a Porsche, it's quite a sizable chunk of money. From a seller's point of view, you want cleared funds into your account before you release the vehicle. And from the buyer's point of view, you don't want to hand over your money until you've got the car. So you've got this kind of to me to you situation. And there are a number of ways of transferring money, and unfortunately all of them are fraught with potential disaster. And don't underestimate the kind of guile and the intelligence and the inventiveness of someone who wants to steal your car off you. I can think of a number of occasions I've actually been to Crown Court to help prosecute people who obtained cars by deception. We helped send them down, and I've also come across situations where we have stopped something before it actually happened. And one of the cleverest scams I've ever come across is a guy who came to see a car, and it was some time ago, and as you do, you get talking, and he was chatting, what do you do? And he's got various industrial properties in and around the home counties, and so essentially he's a commercial landlord, and all seemed well. Had a bit of a haggle over the car and decided eventually, yeah, you know, we'll give this amount for it. And the single cleverest thing that this person did was he had the car inspected by the RAC. And who on earth, if you're going to steal a car, has it inspected? So instantly the guy is a totally genuine guy because he's got the RAC to come and inspect the car. Very, very clever move, and I would use it myself if I was trying to relieve someone of their vehicle fraudulently. Due to pick up a car Wednesday morning, Tuesday night, get a call from the guy's wife. Yeah, Fred's had a bloody nightmare today. He's been in London all day. One of his properties has had a big fire. He's been down with the insurance assessor. Anyway, he's ready to come back home. Is there any chance he can pick the car up now? Because he can just come straight home and rather than waiting overnight. And turned up and presented the banker's draft to pay for the vehicle. And not only that, had photos of a industrial property or the aftermath of a fire. So everything absolutely spot on. It was a stolen banker's draft. But when it's put together, in that way, with such a magnificent backstory and all the elements, having a vehicle inspected and so on, it totally throws you off guard. And so, you essentially lose a vehicle. And unfortunately, when you have your car taken in that way, you do actually lose the car, because your insurance company will usually have a clause in it that they won't cover you for theft by deception. And in terms of legality and ownership of the car, I'm not a lawyer, so please forgive, but essentially, if you hand over my understanding is, if you hand over your car for a piece of paper that you think happens to be worth £60,000, and unfortunately it's not worth anything, that's your decision as to whether you hand the vehicle over. Somebody buying your car, if they buy it in good faith, they do their checks, they do an HPI check and it's all clear, they've bought it, and your issue is a civil matter with the person who obtained your car off you. So it obviously creates an imbalance or a difficulty in terms of physically transferring monies on private sales. So theoretically, a private sale maximises the money you get for your car. In reality, it may not do, because the private buyer is quite hard when buying off the private seller, and there is a risk element to it, and there's a slight awkwardness in terms of how you transfer monies. So another option is to sell your car at auction, and there's either physical auctions or you can have online auctions. Like a private sale, for the buyer, there is no guarantee. If you buy a car at auction and it falls into 1,000 pieces, you're the lucky owner of 1,000 pieces of Porsche. And so when you're buying at auction, you probably aren't going to give top dollar for the car. You're always going to hold a bit back just in case. And there's also another issue with auctions, in that as a buyer, you have to pay a buyer's premium. And that can be quite expensive. Buyer's premiums can be as high as 15%. And obviously someone will also factor that into the price. So if they think your car's worth a given amount of money, they're going to hold back a little bit because they're buying it at auction, and so it's sold as seen and you don't get all your usual lovely test drives and guarantees and so on. And also because you have a buyer's premium to pay, and so you're going to knock that back from the price. And then as the seller, you will normally pay either an entry fee or a seller's premium, and so whatever money is there, you get that taken away from you. There are some platforms which will not charge you as a seller. You'll often may pay an entry fee or some sort of preparation fee to cover promotional costs or advertising or whatever it may be, but they may not charge you an end of sale fee. Usually they do, occasionally they won't. But even in those situations, keep in mind the fact that the buyer is paying all the costs. So again, the buyer is holding a bit back because they can't really test the car properly, and they're also going to be charged a buyer's premium, so they're going to take that off the value. To drill down a little further, there are some platforms which try to do an auction format and allow potential buyers to go and test drive and inspect vehicles. The theory is sound. In practice, no one's going to travel to the ends of the country and invest money in inspections and this, that and the other when they don't know what the final sale price of the car is. They don't know whether they're the only person bidding or there's 10 people bidding. So they're not going to put in any great effort to inspect the vehicle. So essentially they're going to hold back money on what they think it's worth. There have also been some instances where auction houses have failed and people have sold vehicles at auction and haven't got paid. There was one fairly recently which has failed, and a very well-known brand and seemingly kind of long established. So there is a potential danger in that if you sell at auction, you may not get paid. There's a gap between yourself and the buyer. You have no control over how the funds move from the buyer through the auction to you. So again, it's worth considering. It's not risk-free. The third option is to sell your vehicle to a dealer. Now, traditionally, this kind of brings up all the stereotypical, tire kicking images in your mind of selling to some dodgy dealer. Theoretically, you're going to get a lower price than you would do on a private sale, and you might do. However, the dealer is the person who should be able to get the most money for your car, particularly if it's a really, really great example. One of the things, for instance, with auction format is if your vehicle is not a particularly good example, if it's bright and shiny but not a very nice car, auction is quite an interesting option because it looks superficially very nice, but underneath it's not very nice and there's issues with it. So if it's got an issue, an auction is a great way to get rid of a bit of a pup. The saying is you always buy someone else's problem at auction. So let's assume that your car isn't a problem car, it's a really, really great car. A dealer, because they're going to stand to the vehicle, because they're going to offer some degree of skill in terms of the purchase, and they're going to, someone buying off a good dealer knows that the dealer has a reputation, hopefully all the cars they sell are reasonably good, and if there are any problems they can go back to the dealer and say I've got a problem, and the dealer will honour them. So for that reason they can make quite good money. The other thing you can do is when you're buying off a dealer, you can get finance and various types of finance with balloon payments and so on, which will keep the monthly payments down. And also you can part exchange your current vehicle. So it's quite a painless way of doing the purchase. And so for that reason, the dealer should be able to get the most money. And so when you take the fact the dealer is getting the most for the car and the other options have a cost associated with them or a risk associated with them, and even in the private sale, you've got to prepare the car, you've got to get it ready for sale if you're going to get proper money. The delta, the gap between what a dealer will pay and what you will actually end up with on a private sale sometimes isn't as great as you might think. Certainly we've had instances where we've bought cars that have been advertised privately for a given period of time or a period of time, haven't sold, and we've paid essentially more than anyone would pay privately because we saw something in the car which the private individuals didn't when it was advertised, and so in that instance we gave more than the private person, and we've gone ahead and sold the car ourselves and taken profit out of it. So just because a dealer takes a profit out of a car doesn't necessarily mean that you had a bad deal. So do bear that in mind when you're selling to a dealer. There is a fourth way, and that is sale return or commission sales. And these are quite popular. We do them ourselves. We sell some vehicles which are our own cars and some which are our customers' cars, and we sell on their behalf. We don't actually differentiate when we're selling cars. We guarantee all the cars the same. You will see some dealers who try to differentiate and say this is a customer's car, it's not our own car, and they're trying to sidestep their responsibility. I'm not sure you can do that. I think if you're selling a car as a dealer, whether it's a customer's car or your own car, I think you have to stand to it, and certainly we would do, and so we don't differentiate. With sale return, the theory is that the dealer doesn't have to pay to stock the car, and so for that reason can work for a smaller margin, and therefore you get more money. It's a theory. The reality is that we're self-financed, so we use our own money to buy and sell cars, and so there is no cost associated with it. But even if you're working on a stocking loan, the cost of borrowing money isn't huge. If you imagine interest at 6%, let's say, £50,000 costs £250 a month. So if a £50,000 car is in stock for a couple of months, the finance cost to a dealer would be maybe £500. So it's not going to make a difference of £3,000, £4,000, £5,000 to the dealer if it's on sale or return or not. The dealer still has all the rest of their costs. They've got rent, they've got rates, they've got wages, they've got VAT, and VAT is a bit of a killer in the UK when it comes to car sales, because you have to pay the VAT content, 20%, of the difference between your purchase price and your sale price. And so for every £5,000 you make on a car, you pay just under £1,000 in VAT before you do anything. And so that soon mounts up, and that dealer will have to pay that VAT content. And VAT can be a killer that kind of it finishes dealers off if they're struggling a bit. So the dealer still has cost. It's tempting for a dealer to say, oh, I'll work for a really, really small margin, thinking they only need to make a couple of quid out of it. But here's the problem. If a dealer sells your car and has some bills to pay, so uses your money to pay off some bills or to pay for something else, and says on the next deal, when I sell the next car, I'll pay you, and they get one car behind, and then they get 2 and 3 cars behind. In every instance that I know where a dealership has failed, they've always ended up owing customers money. And it's customers who basically used the dealer to sell their car, didn't get paid, and so they lose their car. There's a bit of a misconception in that you assume that if you go to a dealer and you get them to sell your car, the dealer sells the car to Fred, the dealer doesn't pay you, you can go to Fred and say, hi, I never got paid for my car, I'll have it back. You can't do that. Your grievance is a civil matter between yourself and the dealer. So when you get a dealer to sell your car sale or return, essentially you're handing them over a briefcase full of money to the value of your car. And so you need to be quite careful in choosing the dealer who you're going to use to sell your car for you, because you're giving them cash to the value of your car. And so if they run away with it, you have a problem. When you're deciding which dealer you're going to use to sell your car, you need to find out their financial situation. You need to go onto something like Companies House, and you need to find out their net assets, what they're worth. And you need to then look at the 2, 3 most expensive cars they're selling at the time and ask yourself a simple question. Were those cars to go sour, by which I mean they sell that vehicle, the person they sell it to finds out the car's been stolen, it's been clocked, it's not the car it says it is, and they have to hand the guy the money back. Bear in mind they've already paid the owner out. Would they be able to stand that loss or shoulder that buffer, that loss? So in some cases it could take one failed car and they're suddenly in a world of pain and potentially they're going to go out of business. What you mustn't do is you mustn't say, wow, they've got this amazing setup, it's really amazing. For a few £1,000s a month, you can rent a really amazing shed. And the other thing you mustn't do is you mustn't look at their stock and think, holy moly, they've got some phenomenal cars, because they're not their cars. Your car, when you give it to the dealer, they're going to put it in the collection. The next person that comes along, they're going to look at all their cars, one of which is yours. They're going to use your car to validate that dealer, thinking they've got these incredible cars, but it's your car, it's not the dealer's car. And so should the house of cards collapse and it turns out that actually they've had bills mounting up and eventually go out of business, you're going to be stood in their car park or in their shed or wherever it may be with a group of other people, and you're all going to be wanting to be paid out for your vehicles that have been sold, and you're all in the same boat. All you've got is the assets of the company. And so if all there is a coffee machine and an old Porsche 944 and something else in the corner, you're going to find you're struggling. And it happens quite a lot. I can think of several times when people have gone out of business and owners unfortunately have lost cars. And for the reason I said earlier, because it's seen as almost a sign of masculinity in terms of buying and selling cars, owners are then a bit embarrassed to go along and say, yeah, I got ripped off, I've just lost 20, 30, 40, 50, 60,000 pounds through a dealer, but it does happen. There are a couple of things I've come across. I know of there's in terms of getting cars into sale on sale or return, you can promise the earth. So your car can be worth whatever you want to hear it's worth, because the dealer isn't saying to you, I will give you £50,000 for your car. What they're saying is, oh yeah, we'll return you £50,000, but they're not committing a bean to that. Very often, in fact, you will be committing to them because in some instances you'll be asked to pay prep costs, because again, just as if you're going to sell it privately, when a dealer sells your car, it's got to be brought up to speed so that it's in good condition. And so if the car needs prep work doing, that has to be carried out before it will sell, and there's a cost associated with it, and that's down to you. So if it doesn't sell and you want your car back, suddenly you can have a rather large bill. That's what the dealer said it cost, and so you need to be careful. So there are some people that use SOR really just to fund their kind of workshop and prep bays and so on, because they get the work in to do that. Another thing I've come across where dealers are trying to get cars on sale or return, which is quite an interesting little ruse. You advertise your car for sale and you get a phone call from a dealer. Hello, I'm such and such a dealer. I think I've got a guy for your car who wants to buy your car. He's looking for one just like yours. What's it like? And you say, oh, it's lovely, full history and this, that and the other. Sounds great. I'll tell you what I'll do. If you bring it over to us on Saturday, I'll get this guy to come into the showroom as well. Let's let him have a look at the car, and I'm pretty sure he'll buy it. So you turn up on Saturday, and a bit of a problem. The guy can't make it, unfortunately. He's been called away overseas on business, whatever. But dealer has a look round it and gushes a bit more about your car. Wow, this is nicer than you said on the phone. Wow, this is really lovely. Yeah, he's definitely going to have this. Didn't realise it's got a cigarette lighter as well. This is absolutely perfect. So he said, tell you what, leave it with me. I'll get him to come in. I think he's back in on Monday. I'll get him to come in and have a look then, and we'll get this sold. So you leave the car with the dealer, and Monday turns up, and unfortunately, you get another phone call. Oh, you wouldn't bloody believe it. He's I can't say who he is, but he's filming the new. I can't say it, but James Bond film in Italy. So, but anyway, listen. This car's so lovely. We're going to sell this anyway. Let's not worry about the other guy we had. And you've just been conned into leaving your car with a dealer on sale or return. And again, whether there's prep costs involved if you want it back or whatever it may be. But essentially, you've had the car in and they've got your car under false pretenses. And so a lot of garages, their whole sort of house is built on sale or return and on the fact that the customers are giving them the cars to sell. So when you're looking sale or return, as I say, it's a great sort of option. One of the things we find it is very useful for. There's two times when we find it useful. The first is when it's a vehicle that's hard to value. So is this car worth £100,000 or £120,000 to sell out? We will buy it on the assumption that it's a £100,000 car, but we will advertise it for 120. And if we own the car, we've had a right result. But it may not be worth that, and so actually we end up only getting 100 for it, and so we will buy it on that assumption. But with sale or return, we can advertise it for a higher price, and if it makes that higher price, then the owner gets more money. If it doesn't, we gave it a go, and the owner will get a lower price. The other benefit is if we've already got a couple of something or other in stock, and you may not be massively keen to finance a third or a fourth one of whatever it is you've got, but it's still a good car and it's still worth taking into stock, then sale and return works quite well, because the other alternative is you're very, very hard on the owner price-wise, because you just think, well, look, I've already got 4 of those in stock, a fifth one, I'm just going to bid low. So it saves that happening. So that works well there. The things that you want to be watching for is you would expect a dealer to give you both options. So you would expect both a purchase price outright and a sale or return. And if the dealer won't give you an outright purchase price, they're speaking volumes. They're saying either we haven't got any money, in which case should you be leaving the car with them, because as I say, if a car were to go bad, they've sold, does it mean they're going to go out of business and sell your car and you don't get paid and there's a problem? Or are they saying we don't think your car's going to sell, in which case there's no point leaving it with them if it's not going to sell. And so if they either won't give you an outright purchase, or if the difference between the outright purchase and the sale or return is so great, you just think it doesn't make sense, because again, all they're saving is the physical cost of financing the vehicle. So you would want to know from the dealer why there is this big spread. And as I say, it may be they say, well, I've already got 2 or 3 in stock, or we find these aren't selling particularly quickly at the moment, but at least you all know where you stand when you're putting the car in. And then you want to do your due diligence. You want to go online, go onto Company's House. As an example, there are other sites, but Company's House is quite good. And you want to find out all about the company. You want to find out what their net assets are, what they're actually worth. Don't use the stock, because they're someone else's cars. With us, as an example, we're quite open. If you go on Company's House, you'll find the information. We're worth, as a company, got net assets of about £2 million. So that's cash and stock, which turns into cash and moves around. So we're worth about 2 million, and we own the premises that we're in now. That's worth about £2.5 million, and we've got about a £250,000 mortgage on that. So net kind of assets in terms of if something goes wrong, there's about £4 million sat there to pick through the bones should it all go wrong. And I'm kind of sorry if that sounds crass or vulgar, but you have to know that. When you're going to leave your car with a garage, you need to know what they actually have, because you've almost got to say, okay, let's assume it goes badly wrong. When I go there to get my money, it's all well and good saying, okay, well, I'm going to sue them for the money. If they haven't got any assets, if they haven't got anything, and as I say, look at the most expensive car or couple of cars they're selling. And in a lot of failures that I've seen in recent times, generally, they tend to have some quite big, heavy cars around them. And it can be those cars which set the ball rolling, because as I say, if one of those cars goes sour, then the house collapses pretty quickly. And don't be fooled by thinking that they've got lots of those cars around them, that they've got lots of cash as a company, because they will be someone else's cars. So do your homework and sort of see. So it's a few things to think about. As I say, this is, I'm sorry if it's a bit of a serious video, but it's one of those things that I've found in the various internet forums out there and the various platforms online, it's not really dealt with in a particularly open way. When things have gone wrong, it seems to have been swept under the carpet. I've even seen businesses that are kind of almost hoovering up Google in terms of any bad negative reviews and negative things they kind of have removed. So you would think they're whiter than white, and yet knowing what I know about the companies and what goes on, you think, how on earth is the internet not littered with unhappy people and sort of information, but they seem to somehow get it removed, and so it's I think if you go in kind of fearing the worst and do your homework, you're at least sort of protecting yourself. But yeah, as I say, sort of apologies for it being a slightly serious video, but genuinely I hope it's a useful video, and not just for Porsches. I think the rules are the same whether it's a Porsche, a Ferrari, a BMW or a Volkswagen or whatever it may be. Obviously the higher the value, the more potential gain there is for the criminal element, and so the higher the risk in terms of what's potentially likely to go wrong, and so Porsches obviously fall smack bang into that sort of mid-central point of focus for kind of fraud and so on surrounding the sale of cars. So yeah, I hope you found it useful. As ever, if you've got any comments, whack them in the comment section. We try to respond, and thanks for everyone that's subscribing. We've gone over 2,000 now, which I realise in the world of the internet is not huge, but it's nice to see that so many of you are kind of finding the videos of use and enjoyable and so on. And yeah, if you've got any thoughts, feel free. As I try to reply to most of the comments on there. Apologies if it takes a little while, but yeah. So I'm Henry. We're 911 Virgin, the Porsche people in Uxbridge. Many thanks for watching. Hope you found it useful. Stay safe. Bye bye.